Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Stefano Carpani. With Tine, Dmytro, we decided to organize this evening, this community event on the occasion of the 1-year anniversary, or whatever you want to call it, of the invasion of Ukraine. I would like to start with a minute of silence to remember all those that lost their life since last year. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are a fairly small group, and this will help us to have a conversation, hopefully a respectful conversation. 1 year ago, on March 11th, we scheduled an analysis and activism talk with Dmytro to update us on the situation. And we would like to start with you, Dmytro, tonight, and then it will be an open mic. So please raise your electronic hand and say whatever you want to say. Again, hopefully respectfully and within an enclosed group. Dmytro, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you for your interest and your concerning and your care about us and about our situation. And thank you for opportunity to talk about this, because it's in our country, everybody remember this first day. We call that longest day of our lives. It's our President Zelensky called this day this way, the longest day of our lives. And I feel that the same. And we talk about that in the group, and we talk about that in the kitchen between each other. We woke up in this day and we still can't sleep peacefully. And I have some thoughts about that. It's not maybe enough consequences text, but maybe I just give some idea, and maybe later we just discuss about that. And February in Ukrainian language is lutый. It means fierce. And it's a really looks like that, fierce. And we talk and we think all time about a lot of difficult topics, losses at the front line, the strikes on civilian cities everywhere within reach of Russian missiles and drones. And this includes the entire territory of Ukraine without exception, all our territory in this situation. And we're full of concern for our children who have to grow up under the pressure of the constantly looming danger, and our old people who remember the horrors of Second World War, and for them it's like a nightmare, like something they didn't expect. It's if I try to speak about my feeling and my state of mind, I think even now it's hard to concentrate of thoughts. It is much easier to act, to address operational issues, to fill 3 minutes with breaking information from gadgets. It is also easier to lead groups than to prepare for them, to work with patients rather than think about them or supervise them, to act, to do something. It's much more easier. And of course, all time we think about some volunteering activity, always perceiving insufficiency of our efforts for that. And in the analyst task in the war context is very difficult in my point, because on the one hand, one has to hold the line against the Russian invasion, be firm and undoubted in this role, while on the other hand, one needs to maintain a sensitive therapeutic position, be able to fence off salvatory primitive archetypal defense. Really, it looks like primitive archetypal defense, like salvatory for surviving of our psyche. This is challenge for the entire Ukrainian society as well. On the one hand, war requires huge concentration of efforts, focus of the goal, and solidarity of decision making between all of us. And on the another, it is about surviving and developing of the not yet mature democracy, consolidation around the right of diversity and individual freedoms. It's also very contradictory task, because if we try to understand how behave to the front line, we should be very, very concentrating, but in the whole our society we should keep the democracy principle. Tried to reflect on the theme that is so natural during the war, the theme of individuation, and I can't say that I was success, absolutely not. Leopold Stein also drew attention to a certain contradiction between the survival self and the self of individuation. Despite my best efforts to reflect on individuation now, when at war, I couldn't do it. What I can be absolutely sure of is that the pace of individual transformation process definitely accelerates. I could see that in my groups and to my clients. Also, cases of superficial falsificate individuation become obvious during the war. But this goes not bring us closer to understanding the true journey at all. Does this path of true individuation even exist? I don't know. Maybe it's just that the survival self helps keep the soul alive. When I try to understand some process of individuation, I try to watch the movie and try to read something, and I think it's much more easier to find the example of false individuation, of individuation without result. For example, it's a very good film in Tarantino film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We could see just 4 or 5 just a false way of individuation. Looks like everybody have the false way of individuation, but we couldn't see the right way, and that's really looks like absolutely archetypal. Maybe just after our deaths we could understand that. Today Yes, and today I spoke to my colleague, doctor, who is currently at the front line in Bakhmut. He asked me to convey to you two messages. The first one is that what's happening now is a war of good and evil, very simple. A war to basic democratic civilization values, for the rights of diversity, for the shared values of the free world, the values that were affirmed in Ukraine due to the Maidan, the Revolution of Dignity, in 2014. The second one, what he want to say, is that such a war as it is now going on in Bakhmut, especially in Bakhmut, never happened in history before, when two modern armies clash fighting, but almost all possible means, without exception. Nobody have superiority. This is really clutch. This is like Armageddon. The key idea that can be understood in the language of analytical psychology is, in my point, is idea of exporting houses. In the 19, it's very superficial thought, but I want to just observing this process. In 1990s, post-Soviet countries faced enormous challenges. In general, it was their chance to take control of the house with democratic mechanism. The democratic way is very close to the key principle of analytical psychology. I mean, in conscious regulation of the conscious psyche, this idea. But faced with the great fear of disintegration, citizens of Russian Federation chose the opposite way, the manual chaos regulation with the help of authoritarianism. It looks like more simple, but this manual methods has a lot of limitations and does not ensure true balancing in chaotic process. Therefore, the Russian Federation is inclined to the familiar way of imperial existence, exporting houses. The best candidates for this is Ukraine as a young democracy. Moreover, the early democracy process here took often looks chaotic, especially if they are seen through the lens of authoritarian propaganda. And if we go a little bit to the more difficult thing, the most difficult thing, sure, for us psychologists is working with victims of torture and rape and prisoner of Russia who come back to us, to the Ukraine. Even supervising such cases is unspeakably hard. It seems that collective trauma gives rise to the phenomenon of collective containment. I think we also could talk about this kind of phenomenon, collective containment. In this process, we were have a great help to our Western colleagues, our analysts who help us and supervise and make educational support for us, and we are deeply grateful for that. And this terrible sadistic behavior of Russian military was a surprise for all of us, really surprise. In recent years, they have actually been convinced that we are Nazis, an enemy of the human race. They are sincerely determined to the destroy of Ukrainians as a nation. And there is awareness of that. This is of a systemic nature, and it is a result of long-term efforts of the part of systemic propaganda. When an ideological concept is built on the basis of routine xenophobic attitudes. Just lost my impression that surveys among Russians prove that most of them believe that photos from Bucha, from after the Bucha massacre, are staged, are just a fake. Yes, it's a really, really difficult to understand for us. And you know, I don't know. I just maybe sent you some article about village of Yagidne. And my point, it's a very good example of what's going on in Ukraine, because you know we have a situation when we didn't know what's going on in our occupied territory now, and we could just imagine that it could be much more worse comparably with Bucha. It's just in this reality we live now, because we are really think about that and don't know what's going on there. Okay, and by the end, I want to also maybe say something optimistic. And optimistic for me, it's a survey conducted by Gradus Research on the eve of anniversary of full-scale invasion. And what's the result of that? Confidence of Ukraine's victory remained consistently high. 82% of surveyed of Ukrainians are absolutely or rather confident of Ukraine's capacity to repel Russians' attacks. At the same time, Ukrainians believe in the victory regardless of the age, gender, place of residence. According to the survey, optimism about the future of Ukraine is also quite high. According 68% of respondents, Ukraine will become stronger in the post-war period. Almost 90% of Ukrainians are ready to continue fighting off the Russian aggression. It is noted that the majority of respondents, 64, a sign of Ukraine's victory will be liberation of the entire territory of Ukraine as of 1991. 57% fall of Putin regime, tribunal for Putin death. For 54% Russia capitulation, and 50% Russia payment of reparation. That just optimistic some words what I want to say on the end of my speech. Okay, maybe some point or some question somebody have, or please.
Thank you, Dima. Now we open the open mic. Maybe we need a few moments to digest all this. But as soon as some of you, as Dima said, comments, suggestions, even questions, we can really open these as a group. Just raise your electronic hand. Although we are a very small group and I can see all your hands, real hands, but if you raise your electronic hand, it will be easier. Lynn?
I thank you very much for your capacity to think, Dmytro. I just it amazes me. That I think is my sense is that in this time it's almost impossible to process enough so that you mentalize what's happening. I wanted to follow up on on something you said about treatment of victims that are particularly injured, tortured, or enormous losses that they've suffered. You said there's a collective containment, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what it is that that means to you, what's happening with that, and your thoughts about, I guess, the treatment of mental states that are so traumatized that they need more containment than they do anything else. You know, what are you thinking about that?
You know, I'm just maybe using a well-known metaphor, well-known in our society metaphor. It's a Paolo Fonda, the Trieste analyst, used this metaphor. He speak about onion principle of containment. I mean, in the core of the onion, we have the contain our client just face by face, but we're using some supervision group to contain this case more, and after that we're using some study group, for example, to contain this process also. It's like an onion principle. And I think we speak to each other all time, we communicate, and really in the time of war, we feel each other like brother and sister. It's much more closer than the not war period. It's very interesting. I have a patient, she's in Europe, and she described me how these strange Ukrainians meets in Europe. It looks for foreigners that all Ukrainians know each other because they starting to react like to somebody very close. In Germany, in Italy, in France, when Ukrainian meet or see the Ukrainian plats in the car, yes, they starting to communicate and even holding each other, you know. And that's, I think that's something going on with us, and that may be some like a collective containment. And I think it's maybe you are feel this ideas as it's the same like collective unconscious, like a Jungian idea.
Well, I hear it from you in a rather positive survival necessity, that it's a reorientation to the other and to the relatedness and the caring of each other at a level that's very, very high right now. It's kind of feels like a necessity, but it also feels like something of the desire is being expressed. And it seems to me, to a certain degree, that's a really big antidote to processes that are very sort of authoritarian and processes that are very anti-democratic, can't tolerate the diversity. Right now, maybe you can't tolerate much diversity, you know, Ukrainians with Ukrainians, so to speak, but it feels like the connection is getting that there's something very important of connecting, of human beings caring, more than connecting, caring, you know, that something else is getting released in this process for Ukrainians. And so I see it as a potential evolutionary need of the species.
Thank you, Lynn. There is Carolyn, who raised her human hand, and there is Vlad, who raised his electronic hand.
Please, Caroline.
So Caroline and then Vlad.
Thank you. I'm on a new machine and I can't find where the electronic hand is. I'm also taken, Dmytro, thank you for your presentation and your thoughts and the collection of your thoughts. I'm taken too with this idea of collective containment, which perhaps this process right here is an expression of that we're doing now. I had the privilege to watch you and some of your colleagues on the theater of war when you performed Aeschylus's, the part of the Greek tragedy of the supplicants, I believe it was, and which makes me think about what disrupts. I think part of war must be to break out of the containment of knowing we are human beings, and anything we do that reminds us that we are human beings, like coming together to talk, is part of that containment, because otherwise we get separated from our own humanity, which I think Lynn was referencing. And people they experience that both in war trauma and in and rape trauma. Any kind of assault, suddenly there's a sense of being ripped away from one's humanity. And anyway, I'm free associating here, I realize. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you. It was really a psychotherapeutic event for me, this theater of war, you know, and so exciting also to play with this such interesting guy like Defo and this another guy. It's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Vlad.
Yeah, thank you, Dmytro. I just want to comment a bit to share my thoughts about the question, which, as far as I understood, Dmytro has raised regarding whether the individuation at all possible in such circumstances like war. And I believe that it is possible, at least because Dmytro in his speech mentioned, I don't remember the exactly polarities which he has mentioned, but I remember that, but I was thinking about the demands of the collective, demands of the archetypal, I would say like that, or demands of the big collective in which we exist, and not contradiction, but about the pressure between two polarities, demands of the collective and demands of my own, I mean, personal demands, because I by myself have to survive. And I by myself have to serve to society, for instance. This is the polarity which I feel as the polarity between demands of the soul and demands of the conscious, or I don't know, about demands of my conscious orientation or stuff like that, demands of my unconscious and consciousness. And I believe that these were definitely give such opportunity to go through the individuation process, at least because I felt this for many times during this period, as if I was as if I were on a cross, you know, this old symbol, as if I were on a cross between two polarities. Yes, and what else I wanted to add, that I don't know, probably this is my fantasy, but I guess I heard this from the Dmytro speech, this is related with a question about individuation. I heard for a lot during this period. I heard for a lot that the question whether analysis at all is possible in such circumstances, or just a sort of the therapy or something like that. And I was thinking about that and as well. And I think that analysis is possible, is really possible. And from my point of view, analysis in the terms of war is much more it has different nature from my point of view. It is much more sincere, less availability or less capacity for any sort of interpretation. And I also was thinking about analysis in the terms of war. I mean, when both when the couple is in this or that sort in terms of war, I mean the analyst and the patient, I was thinking about it as about a huge enactment, which we can in the end try and probably should keep inside the analytical borders. And probably this is the work of analysis in terms of war, when we go out of the borders, because the war demands to do something very literal from us as analysts, for instance, to do something which we typically do not do without patience. But then we try to go back to the borders of analysis, to restore the normal life, I would say, like that, even though we are still in the terms of war. Thank you.
Thank you, Vlad. Thank you. From first idea, I like that very much. That's really, I mean, between individual and collective demand. Yes, that's really, I think we have a really much more tension in situation of war. Yes. And the second, yes, that's also interesting. I think we will think about that. But you know, we maybe we find some answer after the victory, just after that.
Retrospectively, yes, probably, yeah.
I see many people from Ukraine, not only from Kyiv, but also from Lviv, maybe some from Odessa, some others from London, some other from Zurich. And I thank you, especially those in Ukraine. It's 20 to 11. Actually, those also in Russia, because I see some Russian colleagues. It's very late for you, so it means that you are here. So I would like to try to open this even more. I feel it's safe enough, perhaps, or at least I feel safe enough. I see our dear Katerina Vezzoli in Milan with her wiseness. The Zoyas were here. I don't know if they are here still. Yes, they are. Claudette. So, and I thank you for being here. Irina.
Irena. In
Irena,
Ukrainian,
you're
Irena.
right, you're right. It's that I read your name as it is. I'm Italian. I read what I see. So Irena.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
We talked about this in our interview, right?
Yeah. I would like to reflect a bit about this collective containment. I think that art can also play this function of collective containment, because now we have a lot of new songs, Ukrainian songs. We have never in our country so much Ukrainian songs. So I think that it means something for us that people want to think in Ukrainian, want to write Ukrainian, I don't know, text, or want to paint something. So we have a lot of products of art. It is like, I don't know, it is like bomb of art now. I feel it like that because we have a lot of different in Lviv, for example. I don't know how it is in Kiev or in other part of Ukraine, but in Lviv we have a very big activity of Ukrainian theaters. They are producing new things for people. And for example, last Friday I was in the theater, and all theater was full of people. And I think that sometime before the war, I never had such experience that people are used to. A lot of young people also were in the theater. It's one thing, and another thing what I would like to say, it is about this polarity, and I think that it is the most difficult thing to work with. I mean, we have a lot, I have, and we have in our territory also a lot of people. I have a lot of clients who have parents, for example, in Russia. And those parents, those brothers, sisters, and close friends are living still there. And somehow it is very conflict situation in the family. And it is a very strong tension, and somehow my clients, for example, some of them are losing losing in brackets their parents who still are in Russian, so they are not speaking with them, and it is also big loss for them. It is not only war and suffering because it is war, or suffering because person is replaced to another place to live, but it is also losing a lot of important person who think different, for example, or something like that. And for me, I working, of course, I hearing all this, but I have no relatives in Russian, so it was somehow maybe not so easy to feel it very close. But I have one experience when I was in my supervision group. It is in Poland. And one of our group member is from Russian. She is Russian, and she is very gentle. She is very kind person. I like her very much. I love her very much. And I felt when we were together in this group, I felt so strong ambivalence inside of me. It was very difficult to keep this tension inside, because in one side I felt a lot of sympathy to this person, to her, to empathy, sympathy, and love for her, because I know her a lot of for a long period of time. But in another time I was also suffering because I felt that I have no right to be in one circle with the person who is Russian. It was like I don't know, betrayal of my Ukrainian position and so on. So I had so tension inside that it was difficult to keep it, to contain also it. But I'm glad that we were close enough to talk about it with her, and to share this experience, which I think it is important as for me, like for her also. So it is really, I only wanted to tell that it is really difficult to live with this tension, because we have a lot of person around us everywhere who has this war inside. Not only that I'm Ukrainian and someone is Russian, but to be feel it inside. Maybe even for me, because I'm from western part of Ukraine, I'm very it is like the image of Russian inside of me always was like was shadowed. I mean that my parents and my grandpas, all my childhood were explaining me that Russians are enemy. So it for me it was not so ambivalent, but even for me it is very tense. It is very difficult to be in think in position of thinking and reflect, to keep reflection and be in this situation. So thank you.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you all, because this is a real serious meeting. We never had something like this, at least in the circuit of analysis and activism. Luigi, did you raise your human hand?
Well, maybe I was having dinner, but I would be happy to say something about what was just discussed. I mean, Jung psychology is also called complex psychology. So what Irina was prospecting to us is a complexity, and that's assumed in our profession. And speaking of war, you know that I often wrote about these topics, and I used to ask my mother. I was born actually during the biggest bombing suffered by Italy and by Milan. About 1/4, 1/3 of the city was destroyed in the months I was born. And I used to ask my mother, of course I was born, but I don't remember, but I used to ask my mother about her feelings. And she explained that she was looking at the sky and had very complex feelings, because she always thought the more they come, they were coming by usually at least 100, either British or American bombers at once. And each one had maybe 100 bombs and things like this. And one bomb was enough to cut away several blocks maybe. But the more bombers were coming, and the earlier would fascism end. So she wished not to be bombed, but also she wished more planes coming. And of course, this is something which one should ask if there are some Russian colleagues present, if they have such a complex feelings about the war on their side. I don't think, at least in this moment, any Ukrainian colleague has a similar feeling.
Thank you, Luigi. Dmitry from Moscow, the floor is yours. Your mic, Tine, maybe? Okay, now yes.
Yes, I'm from Moscow. My name is Dmytro. I'm an analytical psychologist, and what I feel now, I'm full of grief, and it's really hard for me to not to be silent. So, but I think that it's rather important to say something from Moscow. Maybe it's my voice maybe will be important. So at the first, I'd like to share with you one dream. It was, I made a small research. I was trying to find a kind of collective dream that will help me just to digest all the awful reality that is going on now in the world. So, and I found such dream, and I'd like to present you. So, I see a lot of people. Everyone enters the building and kisses some kind of sign on the ground. I look and I see that it is a hammer and sickle, a symbol of Soviet past, серп и молот. I go into the building and I see that Lenin is lying here, under the glass. I look at him and I see how he's mumbling his lips. And this is strange because I know that he is dead. I want to go out and I see he looks at me and with half open eyes. He has brown eyes and I am not afraid. So this dream, in my opinion, is very concrete, very accurately describes the processes that now taking place in Russian collective unconscious. So the spirit of Lenin woke up and woke up everything that seemed to be already dead. The terrible history of the 20th century reappeared in the Russian collective landscape. Thanks to the experience of our ancestors, today we know that something in the collective psyche cannot be resisted. This is important to recognize that the individual ego wants to survive. And to help others, it means to forget about yourself, about your individuality. This is the spirit of Russian communism. And those who resisted this spirit were brutally punished and broken. The survival strategy in Russia is not to resist. Those who did not resist survived. And Lenin is a replacement of the alive with the dead. So the life in Russia is just not just a simple life. It's only existing in a miserable collective circumstances. And what is going on today? Why there is no logic in any of the speeches of the political leaders in Russia? Because everyone who is now in Russia, it's the archetypal plan of the collective psyche. It just like sank to the floor down. So it means like everyone in Russia is just has gone crazy completely. We are existing on the archetypal level, just going to the 1 century below. So we are immersed in a collective trauma. And this is a trauma about the civil war, about the beginning of the 20th century. So the Nobel laureate in literature, Ivan Bunin, wrote his famous chronicle of the Civil War named Cursed Days. And if you will check this book, you will be very surprised because the names of the Ukrainian cities are reproduced with a frightening accuracy in this chronicle, just exactly like in use today. So Russia is immersed in a collective trauma. So it makes absolutely no sense to address and to react to Russia's actions as to the something conscious, because we are in the deep sea of the terrible, bloody unconscious of Russia. So, and what can we say now? I think this is, we can have any thoughts about the reaction on this situation. But I think that's the experience of the 20th century, that how Europe already reacted to the similar situation in the beginning of the 20th century. And this reaction, like a kind of isolation in the, like 100 years ago, and this has done no good to anyone. So I think that's Russia is like a patient who is suffering from the very, very bad psychological state, and Russia needs help and cooperation, not exile and isolation, like is now, like this going to be like on a stage now. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Dmytro. Svetlana. Thank you for waiting.
Oh, no problem. Hello. When I think about individuation and the true self, I think in our country it's now possible really, because when we are in the situation of the war and when we meet with big collective trauma, it really gives us a big possibility to have another perspective to our personal trauma. And sometimes it frees people, the situation, yeah, when we can compare collective and personal trauma. And it really gives some freedom to be more truth, more natural, yeah. And for me, it's about individuation. It's about to way to our the true self. And maybe my a lot answer to my colleague from Moscow, yeah, when he said about cooperation. I think what part of Russia needs this cooperation? Because I think in this situation, it's impossible. It's really impossible. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana. I was thinking the same, and my mind went back to the 1930s, when there was a similar situation in Germany, all around Europe, where Europe was possessed by a demon. And I said it many times in the interview with Dmytro, Irena, Caterina, Luigi. There is something of 100 years ago that is again live and kicking. And then I'm thinking of the work that Mark Saban did about the inner and the outer in Jung's work. In the inner, yes, there is a crisis, there is a need for helping Russia, but on the outer, there are some elements that are really incomprehensible, and it's a general crisis of our continent that for the first time in so many years is at war, and we were not prepared. Anna.
Yeah, I'm from Kiev, and I would like maybe to answer our Russian colleagues who ask for cooperation and who speak about not doing anything as the only means of survival. I work a lot with, so to speak, transgenerative trauma, and with people who speak about their families, who had survived 2 world wars and the famine in Ukraine. And it would seem that for Ukraine, this formula of not resisting would be even stronger, because Ukraine has about at least 300 years of being suppressed by Russia, of not being subjective on some level, on the political level. And it would seem that this non-resistance idea would somehow be in our blood. But at the same time, something is going on and we are resisting. And I ask myself, what is the difference? What is the difference between Ukrainians and Russians who had almost the same history, who belonged to the same Russian Empire, and whose identity, meaning Ukrainians, was suppressed even stronger, to the extent that sometimes it was really dangerous to accept that you're Ukrainian or from Ukraine. I have a history of my own family when my grandfather was writing some poetry in Ukrainian language at the university, and he was hiding it under his pillow. And somebody, it was like the end of 1920s, maybe the beginning of 1930s. And somebody informed the official organs that he was a Ukrainian patriot. And he had to escape, and he was on the run. He was hiding in villages. And then his destiny, well, actually was shaped by this event. I wouldn't say that it was a bad destiny, but of course, I would think that being the third generation from him, I would be teaching my children to hide and to not resist, but we are doing quite the opposite. And then I ask myself and everybody who can answer, why is it so different for Russians? Thank you.
Thank you. Dmytro.
Yes, and I like this metaphor about disease. Russia have a disease, but you know, we have the some idea of Lina Kostenko, Ukrainian poet. She said, yes, Russia have a disease, is incurable fatal disease. That's all. Try to think about that. Yes, and I have some another. We have some minutes, yes, or when we should finish?
We have as much time as we want. Nobody's going to cut the line off, hopefully.
Okay. I have also come back to some reality and some literally, because we goes to some theoretical and symbolical idea, but you know, all time I try to maybe put myself down to the ears, yes, and you know, we don't know what's going on with all of us in Ukraine. Nothing finished. We are on the process. And in tradition, Stefano, last time I show you the rifle, yes, in my place.
It was behind you. It was behind.
Yes, yes, no, not now, not now. Now I want to show you this. This is just 100 meters to my place. This is Iran drones Shahid part. You know, this is a part of Shahid. It's just they happened just under our roofs. Yes. You understand what does it mean? It's a part of drone. Yes.
Of a drone that
yes, our yes, and against aircraft service working there, and you know, and maybe also I want to ask everybody about this situation. Can I share the screen?
Yeah, you
I
should
want-
be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not yet.
Tine,
Try again.
try again now.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Could you see the car? Yes, the car. Yes.
Yeah.
It's just one week before we bring this car to the front line, to the Bakhmut. This is a black, very nice car, you know. But it helped to keep the life of 13 soldiers, like they was wounded, and they keep it. And after that, we could see that this is the same car, just one drone kamikaze. You could see that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm sorry, I'm just gathered the donate to the new car. My friends, I just leave my PayPal because we need this car very much, and we are really depend of help of each other. And you, if you prefer to send some little donate, please, we'll do it. Okay, I leave my PayPal in the chat. Okay.
Yes, with pleasure. I want to ask a question to everyone, those that watch my interviews with Dmytro, Dimitri, Irena, Caterina, Luigi. They know that last year I tried to make a connection between what Habermas and Derrida said about Europe when Europe was, or the US and Europe invaded Iraq. And they said that Europe very much was about certain values. And I underlined that perhaps this war is also about this, that Russia doesn't recognize itself in these values that Habermas and Derrida underline. Yesterday I was reading a newspaper, and this newspaper was saying something very interesting, that Russia has been very much European in the past and very much non-European in the past. And the threat coming from Ukraine, from Kyiv, from the Maidan in the past 10 years or even 15 now is actually that, joining values that would bring Ukraine at the heart of Europe, and maybe even a part of Russia that wants to be at the heart of Europe. But again, if you look at the opponents of Putin, they were all killed and sided. So is it the sickness of a nation, or is it the sickness of a part of the nation? That, as you say, Dimitri correctly, cannot resist what is really happening because it's too powerful, it's too demoniac.
I don't know. It's I don't know. I talk about that in my paper about war of symbols. You know, we have a really absolutely different symbols. It's happened. We are not the same with Russia because we have absolutely different symbols. For example, the symbol of communism, it's not very actual in Ukraine, in modern Ukraine. We little bit forgot about that. It's not even a question of fighting. You know, we just forgot. It's like disappeared. And we feel this symbol just like some simulation, you know. That's very strange. But the Jung, his idea about symbol, he speak about symbol like something could be lived and could be dead. The symbol can be just dead, and for us it's just that symbol. We feel nothing sometime. If you ask, you could see the people just keep silent about this. Looks like a deep dream.
Daria, and maybe we can take Daria, and another question or comment is getting later, but it's also very, very interesting. So it's up to you.
Hello to everybody. I'm Ukrainian, but recently, for last 3 years, I live in Prague. And during last months, actually in Czech Republic, there are many Russians who live here, and of course now many Ukrainians. And actually, all the time I was trying to find Russians who will have the idea of feeling guilt and responsibility for what's going on, and to find the person who will say, "Oh, I'm sorry, that is so awful what my country does at your country." But unfortunately, I haven't met such a person. Every time when I am out and I hear Russian-speaking people, I try to distinguish whether they are Russian or Ukrainians. And I always manage to distinguish because because sometimes it's hard to distinguish people from eastern parts of Ukraine speak Russian and similar as Russians speak. But I listen when I'm in a tram or in a cafe, and every time Ukrainians start to speak something about the war, about electricity, about somebody. With Russian people, I never hear anything about the war. That is first my observation. And a question which raised in me, whether is it possible that there are collective defense mechanisms that work on a level of nation? I mean, denial. I had really good friends since I live in Prague who was Russian, and we were really good friends. But we had a conflict because before the war started. When I met her in half of a year since the war started, I had a hope that she said, "I'm so sorry about what's going on." I said to her that one person who, died already in Bakhmut, and she said, "No, I'm from Russian. I can't do anything with I'm just Russian." So it's really, for me, interesting question whether is it possible that collective defense mechanisms work in such a way. As Dmitry from Moscow said, that I understand that Russia is really ill. Probably we can look on Russia as a patient that this state of mind of collective psyche, but still there is a responsibility about what's going on in Ukraine, because every Ukrainian, I don't know anyone who didn't lost somebody to whom he can't or she can't call or send a message during this year. I see the passive influence of war in Ukraine, that many people start to be ill, an increase of cancer is going on. So it's really quite different way of experiencing the war, while in Russia nothing is going on. Nobody can't sleep because the sirenas work and possible attacks are happening. And Stefano, your question about whether all Russia, all apart, it's really such a hard question for me. I also always think, I decided for myself that for me as Ukrainian, every Russian is, I can't believe, but I still have in my soul a place, whether if a certain Russian person will come to me and say something which I would like to hear, that probably I will open my heart, but still it didn't happen, unfortunately.
Thank you, Daria.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oksana.
Yeah, thank you, Dmitry. I want to say that there is a lot of grief, but also a lot of aggression that are going on when you meet such a violence, such a war, and also many of my patients, they have concerns about how it will be for Ukrainian society now and when the war will be finished, because they ask a lot, like themselves and me, what will happen with us? Yeah, will we be traumatized, and in what level, and what will happen with us? Yeah, and today I worked with a very young lady, and she also, it's a year of war, and she was like telling me, well, will we be the same crazy as our grandparents have been when, because like in that matter that they were so anxious and they were trying to, save some food, put some salt and potato to the basement. And always teenagers, they tell, for example, oh, like grandmother, don't be so crazy. You can always buy a potato in a supermarket. Yes, but this is a behavior. And well, today I was in a mood and made a joke about it. As Vlad said, maybe stepped out of my analytical position, but hopefully we can come back. She was asking like, will we be normal? Will we be normal? And I said, whatever normal means, I think we're not going to be normal. It's a huge trauma and we will be traumatized, but we will not be like our grandparents. We will be on a different level. We will not keep a potato in a basement, but we will keep an arsenal of a weapon in a basement. And she said, yeah, I think this will be the reality. And it is really a trauma. I mean, it's not normal for people to think about it and to, like anything, everything is not normal when it's a war. But I believe it's not possible to escape this kind of trauma. Maybe we can do something with it, but you cannot escape.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Luigi. Microfono, Luigi.
I just wanted to put in a perspective what Daria was saying, and maybe also what Oksana was saying now. namely that to experience, to pass through the stage of mourning, you need, we know, a lot of time individually. So the collective mourning is even longer. And I am sort of, let's say, acquainted with this because we started with a group of politically active Jungians 50 years ago. And there was a discussion then that in Germany did not recognize yet enough the guilt of World War II and the genocide and so on. And actually, this has changed only slowly. The first process was in Frankfurt in the 60s, and then little by little, and actually there was even a discussion with the leading German Freudians, the Mitscherlich, he and she, who wrote this book about the non-capacity, the Unfähigkeit zu trauern of the Germans, which have been proved a bit exaggerated, because then the trauer, the mourning process started, but very, very, very slowly, of course, because if it is collective and historical, it's even more slow than in individuals. I am certainly not going to see this, but in this sense, not in other senses, I am more optimistic than those who expect no Russian will be affected and no real movement of repentance will raise. I think something will happen. It's such an aggression is not only destructive for, of course, the victims' nation, but it's destructive also for the group, the country which perpetrates it. And that will have consequences, not all negative, I mean also psychological consequences.
Thank you, Luigi. Vlad. Vlad, your microphone, please.
I wanted just to share my thoughts about the dream and about the reflection which Dmitry has made. Thank you, Dmitry. I was thinking about this image of madman, the image of nation as a madman. And I was thinking that why it's so hard for me, and as far as I see for my compatriots, to accept this image, is because in this image, as if we have to do everything by our own. I mean, before treating madman, we have to put it in chains, you know, because this madman is really violent and it is dangerous now. And we would really appreciate if probably, possibly some kind of seed of sanity will be found inside this madman. I mean, probably this is going to be the first step, because otherwise we have to do a lot of stuff by our own. First of all, we have to put it in chains, and then we have to cooperate with him or her to treat him or her, to treat this nation. I don't know, probably it's too much. It's too much, it could be too much. And I was also thinking, was the first part of my reflections. And I was also thinking about the dimension the dream which I saw. I don't know. I just want to share this with the group. I have no idea where it could lead us. But I was thinking that for me, this dream has a religious dimension. I mean, the person who kisses the kind of cross, I mean, this old Soviet cross of hammer and sickle, and then the Lenin, as far as I understood, it was Lenin who opened his eyes. This is a kind of idol, Soviet idol, or let's say a representation of totalitarian God. For me, it's like a dream, but it's a religious dream, but a sort of perverse religion. I don't know. And I was thinking where it could, if it's possible, it could lead somewhere. I don't know. I just decided to share these thoughts with the group.
Thank you.
Because from my point of view, I'm sorry, excuse me, from my point of view, and you know for sure by yourselves that they are very close. I mean, the prophets and the saints and madmen, they are taking the energy from one root, but behave differently.
Yeah, it's a complex dream. Thank you, Vlad. What comes to my mind as an Italian man actually is the fact that Lenin died in 23, and everything that happened after is actually the preparation for what we are experiencing now. So was Lenin the madman, or was Lenin the one that actually took care of Ukraine in a certain way? And also it's interesting that the dream was brought by a Russian and is commented by a Moldavian, but of course, not by Ukrainians and not by an Italian, which is understandable. Yeah. How do we feel? Do we have other comments? Do you want to wrap it up? I have something that I would like to share with you before we end up, but of course the floor is yours.
I think maybe I'm not understand right way, but it's also like something manipulation I could see in this way, because if we talk about mad person or crazy person, it means this person in normal ethics, it's not subject of jurisdiction. It just avoids it's just you know, we should maybe check the forensic. I mean,
actually they are much more oppressed than typical person who commits the crime, because if you commit the crime, you can sit in jail, you can spend some time in jail, and then you go and you are free. But if you are mad, you can sit in the madhouse forever. I mean, they are much more oppressed. So
it's a question, but it's a sorry, it's a question of non-subject to jurisdiction, I think, and that's I think if this person is okay, you understand what I mean.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Stefano.
I do. And actually today, before we started, we were talking about the Nuremberg trial that started as a trial not against the Germans, but against those that caused war against peace. And this was a trial made in a way that, although the many confirmation of atrocity, war crime, crimes against humanity, the Nazis could defend themselves. And this is important for international law. But what Dmytro is saying is crystal clear. Now we have Tine. I don't know if it was Svitlana or Irena. You decide among yourself. Tine.
Hello to everyone from my side. I have to say, I think it's one of the more real AMA meetings in Zoom till now, and I'm really touched by it. Many thoughts. I have to say, here in Slovenia, I have experience with Russians that are really sorry, really feeling ashamed, although it's not their personal fault. So I don't know. It might be because they are so far away.
Ina, it's very difficult to hear you.
Can you hear me now better?
Yes, it's better.
Okay. I'm just looking. I'm sorry. What I wanted to say is several things. I said I'm touched by this meeting because I think it's really real. One of the more real things we had on these meetings. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I met here a lot of Russians who are ashamed of what is happening, who are personally feeling ashamed, although they have nothing to do with it. And it's I don't know how to explain this phenomenon when Daria said she cannot meet such, and I believe her, of course, in Czech Republic. It might be they're too close. I don't know. This is one thing. The other thing, I just, with this dream and Lenin, I remembered Putin in his first speech in war. He said he will decommunize Ukraine because he said Lenin is guilty of Ukraine, which is again, it's one of his, I would say, this mad expressions. I can remember first time I was aware of this not logical sentences was when May Day was happening. He accused gay people, Jewish people, and Nazis organizing it. You know? And at that moment, everyone who can think logically can see there is something going heavily wrong, you know, in this narrative. But still, I'm wondering of the symbolic meaning of Lenin as someone who actually Putin is accusing. Anyway, my heart is with you, Ukrainians. For me, you are all heroes. And one more thing, I think on you, somehow Europe was numb in last 30 years, spoiled, numbed. We forgot our core values, core ideas. And I think there is a war of ideas, and that you showed Europe the value of these ideas. It's like the heart of the core of the European ideas of humanism somehow, you know, got alive again in Ukraine. And I think all Europe is shaken by it. Somehow has woke up last year.
Thank you, Tina. Irena.
It is more about reflection about what was going on when we, our group here, starts to talk about dream of Dmitry. I was thinking that a lot of energy at that moment was about Dmitry dream, and it was a bit pity even for me that we are not talking about dream of one of Ukrainians here. And I thought at that moment that maybe Ukrainians are not thinking that their dreams are so big to talk about and so big to open and to share. Maybe it somehow also illustrate our situation, maybe, and our suffering in this situation. I'm not sure that I'm clear. I explained clear, but it's only about feeling what I had when we were talking about this dream, and a bit about cooperation, also about Dmitri's invitation to cooperation. I think maybe in future it could be possible, but of course it is very difficult for Ukrainians and for Russians, maybe even more, to cooperate. I would like to explain one case of cooperation. When I came to Poland, when I was in while it was war, I was in Poland also several months. And at what moment I noted that there were a lot of courses of Ukrainian language for Ukrainians, because a lot of Ukrainians from eastern part of Ukraine don't speak Ukrainian very well, unfortunately, but it is true. And Polish people was gathering, and they organized courses of Ukrainian language, and it was very pleasant to feel that Polish people was trying to support Ukrainian culture. It was not important for Polish people that Ukrainian in Poland have to speak Ukrainian, but it was only supporting of culture. I think that when Russian people will start to organize such courses of Ukrainian language and Ukrainian culture in their country, maybe at that moment, maybe it could be this point that cooperation could be possible. But I think it is not this point now. It is impossible, of course, for such steps from Russia.
Thank you, Irina. Before to allow Svetlana, I want to make a comment, perhaps on behalf of Dmitry. Dmitry and I talked twice, and we recorded interviews, and we also had confrontation, I would say. But I always find that Dmitry is also speaking for those that don't know what to do and need help and guidance. I wonder whether he did the same tonight, and he did it his way, although being in a place where he is one in a context of many. Yeah, this doesn't mean that the energy has to shift from one side to the other, but this is my free interpretation of what that was. Svetlana. Microphone, please.
I have a short comments about this dream. For me, first, it's only mad person wants to kill people and to cooperate with them simultaneously. And second, in Soviet Union, we have some slogan, Lenin is always alive. And I think in Russia is alive really. And maybe about Irina, I think sometimes it's very useful to know about inner situation of our enemy through their dreams. Thank you.
Thank you. Tine and Luigi, you still have the hand raised. I don't know if this is because you want to speak or because no. Okay. Okay. Then we have Vlad. Vlad. Microphone, Vlad.
Yes, I just for a minute, I just want to say goodbye. I wanted to write it in the chat, but I decided that the group is too small that I can spend 1 minute of your time. Thank you very much for this group. It was really intensive and stimulating. Thank you very much. Hope to see you in the nearest future.
Vlad,
Bye.
don't go away.
Bye.
Stay 1 minute here because I would like to read something to you that I was reading today. Is a book by Jan Morris about Trieste. Trieste is the city that
I know.
Dmytro mentioned a while ago about Dr. Fonda, the Freudian analyst. Well, at the end of this book that is titled Trieste and the Meaning of Nowhere, the author talks about the city as follows. Here, there are people everywhere. There are people who form a fourth world, or a diaspora of their own. They are the lordy ones. They come in all colors. They can be Christians or Hindus or Muslim or Jews or pagans or atheists. They can be young or old, men or women, soldiers or pacifists, rich or poor. They may be patriots, but they are never chauvinists. They share with each other across all the nation common values of humor and understanding. When you are among them, you know you will not be mocked or resented because they will not care about your race, your faith, your sex, your nationality, and they suffer fools if not gladly, at last sympathetically. They laugh easily, they are easily grateful, they are never mean. They are not inhibited by fashion, public opinion, or political correctness. They are exiled in their own communities because they are always in a minority. But they form a mighty nation if they only knew it. It is the nation of nowhere. And I have come to think that it is natural, and I have come to think that its natural capital is Trieste. The elusive flavor that I enjoyed here is really only the flavor of true civility evolved through long trial and error. Interesting that I read this today. Hopefully, these words can be about Trieste, can be about Kiev and Ukraine, but Europe in general, Daria, did you raise your hand?
Yes, a short comment. I hope that soon we'll be able to meet together in Ukraine, in Kiev or somewhere closer to front line, and to speak about all those issues as we can speak now about Trieste.
In
That's it.
Zaporizhia.
Thank you.
In Zaporizhia, please.
Yes, Svetlana invites us to
In
Zaporizhia.
Bakhmut, it will be better.
Well, maybe it's too early to say, but Tine, Monica, and I from the Analysis and Activism Committee have the fantasy to have the next conference in Kiev, and in Ljubljana in September. We will vote for this. So
Perfect.
make sure to come to Ljubljana if you can, or to join. As we said before, Ukrainians will be able to sign up for free. I have a question for you. You can say yes or no. Shall we keep these privately, or would you like to share these with the bigger Analysis and Activism group? Because this could be a beautiful example of what a group could be. Raise your hand if you agree to share it.
See.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems almost everyone.
I would ask differently if someone is against.
Well, now it's impossible to see. Okay, we will share it. Thank you and good night. Thank you very much.
Maybe one last word from my side. I have no doubt that the next Analysis and Activism conference will be here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao, Stefano.
Ciao.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Or we can stay here even longer if you suffer of insomnia like Tine.
Good night.
Good
Ciao,
night.
Luigi.
Ciao. Ciao, Tina.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye, Daria and everyone. Dmytro.
Bye.
I love you all.
Good. It was worth doing it, right?
Yes.